And I really, 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 really hope that Panthers owner David Tepper is watching and paying attention to the teams that qualified for the postseason.
Why would anyone do that?
Well, because they could learn, Dennis. They could learn. Maybe it's by watching the Jaguars and the Chargers. The Jaguars last year were 3-14. They had the worst record in the NFL. Oh, by the way, in 2021, they were also coached by a college coach way over his skis in the NFL. So the Panthers have something in common with the Jaguars. The Jaguars this year jumped to 9-8 under their first-year coach. And guess what? They won a bad division. Mm-hmm. They're in a bad division. The Panthers promise to remain in a bad division unless something seismic happens this offseason. But Joe, to channel my obvious, Jaguars have a franchise quarterback that they took with pick 1-1. The Panthers don't have one of those. Okay, that's fine. Let's pay attention to the Giants then, shall we? Because the Giants were 4-13 in 2021 under Joe Judge, who might have been the worst hire, even worse than Matt Rule. Joe Judge might have been the worst hire in the last 20 years in the NFL. That's how bad he was. Terrible, brutal, an absolute joke. 4-13. The Giants had actually lost at least 10 games, Dennis, in 7 of the previous 8 seasons. The New York Football Giants.
That's not good, is it?
That's how big of a mess that Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator in 21, walked into. Well, now look at this. Giants this year go 9-7-1. 9-7-1. You look at the Jaguars, 9-8. So 9 wins to get to the playoffs. Panthers won 7 games this year. They weren't that far off, particularly given everything that happened. I mentioned Matt Rule, right next to Joe Judge in awful hires in the last 20 years. You get rid of Matt Rule, you play down the stretch 6-6 under Steve Wilkes. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not good enough, though. So what did the Giants do? How did the Giants magically get better? Did they go out and get a better quarterback? I mean, Daniel Jones was good, but was he thought of as Trevor Lawrence? Is he thought of as a great free agent pickup? No. Did they get their running back healthy? Well, yes, they did.
Yeah.
They got Saquon Barkley back, a guy that they had drafted number 2 overall. And here's a guy who, 2 of the last 3 years had been dealing with a lot of injuries and wasn't the same player, wasn't the same difference maker. The Panthers had one of those in Christian McCaffrey, but they traded him. I don't mind that the Panthers traded Christian McCaffrey. I don't mind it at all. Do you know what the Giants really did last year, Dennis? They had 2 picks in the top 10, and they hit a home run on both. Mm-hmm. The Panthers in the 2 years under Matt Rule, the first was not Scott Fitterer. The last year it was Scott Fitterer, GM. And I'm just going to say it. I think Rule was probably the one who had the most input for those draft picks, his 2 years in his tenure.
Yeah.
They can come out and tell me differently, and that's fine, but I will not believe them. Their 2 picks were Derek Brown, who's
solid.
He's good.
Yeah.
Solid. Average.
No, he's better than average.
Better than average.
Solid's better than average.
Solid. Huh. Is that a home run?
He got better as the season progressed. I mean, he's getting better and better. So I would.
But is that your answer was solid?
Solid.
Right? Always go with your first answer.
It's a triple. I wouldn't say home run.
A triple?
Yeah, go with the triple.
Derek Brown. Solid. J.C. Horn might be great.
Yeah.
You got to be on the field, though. The best ability is availability. He has not been on the field in his 2 years. Injury prone. I don't need anyone. You can't make the team from the top.
You talking about J.C. Horn, or are you talking about Jeremy Chin?
J.C. Horn.
Oh, J.C. Horn. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are their 2 first-round picks under Matt Rule. I don't disagree with the premise of either pick. Get yourself a building block on the defensive line. Get yourself a lockup corner. Neither player, though, is pulling their weight, at least not in the way that the Giants did in this one draft, which, remember, they got by allowing a team to trade up to take a quarterback. So they had an extra pick. They used the extra pick well. Kayvon Thibodeau, in my opinion, is a home run. He's the kind of player you want on your defensive line getting after the quarterback. Evan Neal at tackle is a home run because you can be Bill Walsh reincarnated. And Brian Daboll is getting a lot of credit for turning Daniel Jones around, and he deserves a lot of credit. But what you can't do without an offensive line is improve a quarterback or improve your offense. So the Giants made 2 home run picks. The Panthers at best are hitting 300 at best with their 2 picks. So you got to get the right coach. You got to fix quarterback. You got to make better draft picks in the top 10. Panthers haven't done that so far. Let's look back at the Panthers season 2 because that 7-10 record, Dennis, I have talked before about what Matt Rule's deficiencies were. He couldn't beat the bad teams, and he couldn't beat the teams like him. Okay? So this season, it's obviously a mix, more Steve Wilkes than Matt Rule. But the Panthers were 1-2 against the bad teams. And I'm going to characterize the bad teams as teams that won 5 games or fewer. Okay? So the Panthers were 1-2 with a win over the Broncos, a loss to the Cards, and maybe unfairly a loss to the Rams, who still had Matt Stafford at the time of the game. Okay? So those are the 1-2 against the bad teams. That's not good. And I'm going to tell you why here in a second. 6-5 against like teams. I'm going to categorize like teams as teams who won between 7 and 9 games. Panthers won 7 games. The teams who made the edge of the playoffs won 9. Okay? The Panthers went 6-5 against like teams. You got to beat the like teams. That's where your coaching advantage has to come in and work. 0-3 against the good teams, 10-plus wins. I'm not going to bag on them for the 0-3 record against the good teams. They lost to the Ravens, Bengals, and Niners. In my opinion, you're going to see the Bengals and Niners in the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh my God, you're terrible. Let's look at the Giants. The Giants won 9 games. They finished 9-7-1. They got into the playoffs at 9-7-1. 3-0 against the bad teams. Well, look at that. Giants won 9 games. The Panthers won 7. The Panthers lost 2 to the bad teams. The Giants didn't lose any. Quick math says take care of the business you are able to take care of. And here's where Brian Daboll probably is going to win NFL Coach of the Year. The Giants went 5-2 against like teams. I'm not counting the tie to the just wins and losses. 7 games, 5-2. It's where you make your money. That's how you make your name, and that's how you make progress in the NFL. You want to guess what the Giants' record was against the good teams, Dennis?
Probably not great.
No, 1-5. 1-5. So you can live without beating the good teams. Of course, they're in the same division as the Eagles and Cowboys. They went 0-4 against those 2 teams, and then they had losses to the Vikings in a wild game where they lost on a 61-yard field goal. So I'm not exactly going to hold that one against them. The Vikings and Giants do meet in the playoffs this weekend. That's one of the games I'm looking forward to. The Jaguars and the Chargers is the other I'm looking forward to. I sincerely hope David Tepper pays attention to each of those games. A little bit of coaching can go a long way.